reactions to that last chapter?
Holy shit. That's my reaction.
That's
I
fair.
got pretty tense.
Good reaction.
We had the King of Override battles
Yes,
right there.
that was
like,
so exciting.
I hope that it caught that it was like a massive override battle with multiple people.
Yeah.
Because that was insane.
Yeah. I love that, honestly. That
It was yeah,
really...
it definitely adds a lot of cool. It just makes it more fun. Just like, I don't know. I don't have any left. Who still had overrides after that?
Me.
Mikey still had one.
Kevin,
I think
our
we
Lord
still
and Savior.
have one.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about that one. Let's talk about the... So I admit 100% that I was metagaming because I trusted Jay, and I felt like the family has a tendency to listen to Jay more than they don't listen to Jay, or at least try
Jay,
to... Go ahead.
There's a phase. There's a I don't know if any of you guys have watched The Boys, but there's a phrase that people use to describe Huey as the canary. He is the one that if he says we can't go any further, you know you've gone too far. In my mind, Jay is the canary of the whole family, in that if he says I'm not doing this, they know they've gone too far.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked more to lean more on Jay, just because I was putting more trust in the character, but from a meta perspective, not necessarily because I thought Vince, had the same... With all the flashbacks we saw of Jay from his past, it solidified that more meta aspect of that choice than before. So that was my reasoning.
That's fair.
How about everybody else? Anyone else?
Yeah, for me it was the ending of the whole becoming more defiant arc for him. At the beginning of the game, he was kind of following along mostly, in my opinion. And then as soon as the gun shot, that trying to shoot Tyler moments happened, then it was the start of the character arc, in my opinion, for this. And this was the climax of not letting down, protecting that family, and he had to keep that gun up, in my opinion. So it felt really, really hard for that one. I'm glad it turned out that.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because I used my override to try to get Vince to lower the gun. The reasoning being that this was still, regardless of kind of who was involved, this was still a situation where somebody had a gun to you, they were threatening you, they were saying put the gun down, and I felt like there was going to be serious ramifications for Vince if he didn't. So I was thinking of it from kind of Vince's safety. But after seeing how the episode ends, I'm actually glad that I was overruled, because Zoe now has those memories. Those are, she remembers that, and I don't know if she ever sees Vince again or what their relationship is. But the last thing that we saw her see was that he was fighting for her. He didn't give up. He didn't let them take her. He kept the gun up and tried to get her back. So I'm glad that she has that.
Anyone else about the override battle, or why you picked what you picked?
Yeah, I was fighting for Vince to keep the gun on them, because after the initial put the gun down thing back in way back in chapter 1, I was like, for me personally, in my head, I don't know if I ever vocalized this, but in my head I was like, okay, I will accept that one, but if it happens again, I'm overriding, because we talked about trying to keep the peace, trying to test the waters a little bit. At this point, I felt like the waters have been tested. This Fair. Is, this is that's my kid.
That's fair.
That's my kid. I don't think Vince would just let them take her at that point. You know, like I was like, Jay can shoot me, but I'm not just gonna lower my gun and let them take it, because the moment I lower my gun, I'm making a choice to let them take her. You know, that was my decision. And so seeing how passionate a lot of people were about that decision it was amazing to watch, first of all. And then once I realized, okay, we're out of overrides for this person, I'm gonna hop in. I'm glad it turned out the way it did, because that's what I think any father would do in that situation. And you know, Vince, I felt like that suited Vince, you know, so that's why I fought so hard for that.
I'm one to agree. I think Roman's dead on that one. I genuinely think that if it had gone to a point where like I was the only one left with an override, I would have overridden and had him point the gun still. I didn't want to use up all of my overrides in that one little engagement, but I was entirely sure that if I got to the end of it and the last override was put the gun down, I would have ridden it and done it, because I firmly believe that in that moment, Vince would have been like, "You can shoot me, I don't care. I am not letting you take my daughter." And the fact it was Jay, let's give it a hypothetical. If that was Dale in that situation, I don't even think we would have had a choice. I think Dale would have just shot him in the leg and it would have been it. But the fact it was Jay made it more tense, because we don't know if Jay is actually going to do it or not up until that moment. And I wonder if that's all influenced by the fact that we didn't let Jay let his dad kill himself, because of the fact that, you know, he didn't want to lose his dad, but then he remembers his dad saying, life isn't about what you want all the time. So, you know, it's one of those things of that I wonder if we had have let Bear kill himself, if that would have happened, would Jay have just not shot Vince? Or maybe he would have shot Vince because of the fact that his dad died for this. You know, it's all a good question thing, and it's left me kind of like, okay, I need a drink tonight.
Yeah, I really want to know what the influence was from that previous scene.
Yeah.
The suicide attempts, because the way they just show that it seems so important, and so curious what the other options would have been.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see like how many branches and how many different outcomes you could have had in this chapter.
Who else? Does anyone else have anything about that put the gun down, not put the gun down? Anyone else have anything?
Genuinely fun. That was very intense, and I quite enjoyed it.
I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you, Hart.
I was just asking if anyone else had thoughts on that battle, like why you chose what you chose.
I chose to. I think I was choosing to have him lower the gun. I think my logic was that I wanted to try and de-escalate, and from Jay's facial expression, obviously Vince wouldn't have been able to see that, but from, you know, obviously from the camera, from the player's perspective, the look on Jay's face, I was genuinely concerned that he might have shot us in the back of the head. I was genuinely just like, I think seeing the whole thing with his dad, he's just gone through this extremely traumatic night that he did not really want to be a part of. And then seeing Dale die, and just I was like, I was just thinking this boy might have snapped. And I don't want Vince to die. 2, I don't want Zoe to see her dad get his brains blew out. So that's why I was trying to lower the gun. Although I do agree with what both Hannah and Roma have said about like a dad wouldn't just like, oh, you're gonna take my daughter, bye. And and like the fact that the last thing Zoe saw was her dad trying to fight for her, I just didn't think of that. All I could think of was like, I don't want to get shot in the back of the head. Just please no.
I'm curious, like, did anybody make the initial decision to like raise or lower the gun, and then when the second choice came up, listen or don't listen to Jay, did anyone like change their mind or have doubts at that point, or was it very much like people that wanted to lower the gun, like, they did everyone like feel very confident in their choice, even after that?
Super confident.
Nobody
nobody changed their mind after that. That is interesting.
No.
Yeah, I didn't change my mind
The only
either.
moment where I might have had a bit of like doubt was when it was quite literally the moment where like the sheriff was coming up to me, and I was like, okay, this is going to go one of two ways. Either Vince is going to get pretty badly hurt, and we're going to see the sheriff like walk away, and then they're going to take Zoe and leave. That was the only time where I was like, they're just going to, the sheriff is going to stun us so badly that we can't move, or we're stuck on the floor and the sheriff is going to arrest us. Or, something, it was a case of something was going to go so badly that I was just going to be like, okay, this is where everything ends for Vince, for poor Vince.
Mm.
I didn't ever think that Jay was going to kill Vince. That was the one thing I was like, I don't think Jay can kill Vince.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you told him you have to kill Vince or we're gonna, kill you, I'm pretty sure Jay would be the kind of guy who just wouldn't be able to do it. So it didn't really. I was half expecting Jay to drop the gun and just say, I can't do this, because that
I wasn't entirely sure about that, because I think Jay still has a lot of more connection to his family than he does to Vince. And I think at the point you were at, there was such a level of escalation and desperation. I thought maybe Jay could have done it. Obviously wouldn't have wanted to, but I thought, with his family kind of like putting all that pressure on him, I think he was close to
I think
snapping.
Jay has enough of a head on his shoulder to know that he didn't need to kill Vince, he just needed to get him out of the situation, which is why I'm like, at worst he's going to shoot us in the leg or something. I was like, there's no way he's going to actually kill Vince, because I don't think Jay could have that on his conscience. I don't think Jay could live with the fact he could kill. I don't think that Jay could ever live with the fact that he killed somebody, just because of what he is as a person. At least what he's been portrayed as so far. Though I do appreciate he got that.
Especially with the decision to save that man.
Yeah, I do appreciate the fact that he got the badass moment of sitting staring at the cops and throwing the car in reverse and reversing off. I was like, oh, I knew full well what he was going to do the second he did it. I was like, oh, here we go.
That was cool.
It was cool.
I wanted to piggyback off of something that Mikey mentioned earlier about Jay's dad's philosophy. He said two things that I resonated with me. So one of the first things his dad said was, sometimes doing the right thing is not actually doing the right thing. And the other thing he said, as Mike brought up, was in life, life isn't about getting what you want. And so my reaction to that is, what you want isn't always the right thing. And I think that based on his philosophy, he thinks the right decision or the right choice is, if I do this right choice, I get what I want. And I think that's why he ended up in the slippery slope, because he tries to validate it by saying, I'm doing this all for you, I'm doing this all for your family. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, you're not doing this for your family, you're thinking about yourself, because any person who is trying to think selflessly about their family would not be involving their kids into X, Y, and Z. They would not have asked his youngest son to come and bury this body that you that's not you thinking about your family, that's you thinking about yourself. And so that is one thing that's triggering to me, and what I really do feel adamantly about with my decisions is when I find parents who suck as parents. That's very triggering to me, because I do, as somebody who worked very hard to have a kid in the first place, I obviously didn't have my kids by accident. I had to go jump through tons of hoops over years and dropping a lot of money, and did a lot of sacrificing to have my kids. And then there's these other parents who, unfortunately, they maybe they had a kid but didn't necessarily want to have a kid. And not to say that people who accidentally have kids aren't good parents, I'm not saying that at all, but it's very triggering for me that someone like myself who wants kids, I'm working so hard to have them, and then you have these people who have 3 kids, 3 boys, and they're just
3 happy, healthy boys.
3 happy, healthy boys. And I get that their life is hard, but I feel like there's decisions that were made that sort of, not everything, I don't know their full situation, but I know that their situation isn't 100% their fault. But I do think that some missteps were made, or some poor decisions were made didn't help their situation. So anyway, that's my tirade.
Speaking of that, I was wondering why he picked Jay in the first place, because obviously his other sons would have been the better choice. And I wonder if that was him doing that misguided father parenting, I'm going to toughen him up. And
No, I think it's the
kind
opposite.
You think?
I think Bear wanted Jay to talk him out of it.
Oh.
I think Bear wanted Jay to save him
Maybe.
because he knew that Jay would be the only one who would put up a fight against this. Because so far, Jay is the only one who's ever actually said, just said, hey, I'm going to be honest with Mom and tell her exactly why we're fighting and tell her why this strange man was in our house. So as far as I'm concerned, I think Bear didn't want to do what he felt he had to do. But he knew that if he brought Jay along with him, Jay would talk him out of it, or at least fight him on it.
Even subconsciously, maybe. Like, maybe subconsciously he chose Jay. But that's a good point.
Are you talking about the burying the body? Because that's kind of way too late to get talked out to. Because there's already a body.
Well, he assumed it was a body. Was the thing.
Then thinking about, I hope my son will tell me that I shouldn't bury this dead body on the back of my truck. That's,
I mean, like at that point, it's like, well, it's a case of you either, like, obviously he wasn't thinking, because he just thought he killed a man.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I think very subconsciously, not like at the forefront of your brain, he thought, I need to get one of my kids to come do this.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay will kick up the least amount of fuss about doing it if I tell him I need to go to the hospital, is the forefront thought. But subconsciously, I think Bear wanted Jay to talk him out of it. Bear wanted Jay to tell him, you need to call the cops, you need to own up to this in some way. Because Jay always seems to be the one who holds the other members of his family accountable about things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think it was him talking out of it, but like, now that you bring that up, he said that he's easiest to talk to with Jay.
Yeah.
So maybe it was more of him easing his conscience over the act that he just did. And he wanted to talk to somebody about it. So not necessarily like talk him out of, but talk to and how sort of help him process this massive, terrible thing that he just did. Obviously, Jay's going to be the only person he can reach out to do that sort of that. So I think that might have been it then.
I think out of the three sons, I think the father, although they're very different, I think he respects Jay the most. You know, in that conversation they were having, he was saying like, you're a good kid, you do the right thing and all that. I think he almost wishes he was more like Jay. I don't think he has as much respect for the other sons.
Well, that's interesting, because one thing I noticed that I wanted to point out is that the fist fight between the Bear and his sons, like near the beginning of that scene, I remembered when Jay got in between them, and he specifically like did not hit Jay. Bear specifically like threw Jay out of the way, but he didn't hit Jay. And yeah, you could probably argue Jay's the youngest, so he wouldn't hit the youngest. Like, I don't know, Jay's old enough. Like, I feel like with the stories that he said about how his dad used to beat him up, I feel like, you know, he could have beaten on Jay too if he really wanted to, but he didn't.
I thought it was Tyler who pushed Jay out of the way. Jay was in front of Tyler holding his hands up. Tyler pushed him. I didn't think Bear pushed him.
That's possible too.
Because Tyler is very protective, obviously, of his brothers.
That's
well, brother now.
Yeah.
Too soon?
Was Sam about to speak?
Well,
Go ahead, Sam.
I might shift topics, so if someone has something else to add to this, go ahead.
Yeah.
So
I have something to say about Jay.
Go ahead.
Have any of you all noticed just how different is the word phenotypes? His features. Jay has very different features from his brother.
You're about to say about to say the same thing. I was about to say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I
don't think he's theirs.
He has the same phenotypes as Jim.
I think he's Vincent's half-brother.
And Jim was there 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
That's, Didn't
I just say we need to adopt Jay?
There's a specific line where it's like, Tyler's like your mother, Dale's like me,
Dale's like,
and you're not like either.
You're not
of
like
us.
any of us. Right.
And it's like, Sam brought that up, and I was like, oh,
that's
shit.
Interesting.
That's why Jim
Now that
wants
you
to hide
actually
from
mention
mother.
it, now that you mention it, actually, Jay does have the same jawline as Jim.
If you look at it,
Yes.
especially in that last part, if you guys rewatch the episode where he's about to go down, jump out of the window, it looks just like Jay. He looks just like Jay.
Mhm.
I was
Oh,
like, that's where I
that's so
pieced it together.
cool.
I was like, that's his dad.
That's
That's what he's trying to tell
interesting.
him. And like, he put the cap on when what's her butt walked in.
Sharon came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharon, I was like, ah.
Yeah.
That's
I was
such
like,
a good goal.
Jay's 15. It's Jay 15?
Oh, it's a good.
I think he's
15,
17.
20.
17?
Yeah.
That's still match.
Yeah.
That's still. Yeah, he's driving, so he's at least older than 16. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, actually, what's the legal age to drive in Arizona? Let's find that out. Let me do that. Let me do some quick Google foo.
Yeah, because I was when they were doing the barn scene, I was like, the two brothers like these guys are so hot, and I was like, and Jay's not attractive.
I
was
think
like,
Jay's
he looks
cute, yeah.
so different. He's like,
They do look
not
different.
tall. Their facial features aren't exactly the
Mhm.
same.
Yeah, like both Dale and Tyler have more square jaws.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
more naturally square features.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there, Sam. I do admit, even though I don't particularly like Tyler and Dale that much, I do agree they're eye candy. but but I like Jay too. I
Dale's
think he's
amazing.
adorable.
Also, apparently you can drive in Arizona at as young as 15. So,
Okay, so it's possible, yeah.
yeah.
And they're kind of like the country-esque thing where it's like, you don't really need a license.
Yeah, that's
kind of
true.
teach you
Yeah,
how
it's
to
also
drive.
like it is also 1998 in
That's
rural
true.
Arizona.
There's-
So
It's like a bike.
Probably driving since they could see over the dashboard.
probably, yeah, probably.
The thing I
No.
noticed was the earlobes,
Oh yeah.
because specific earlobes are genetic. And it was in the car when he was like, "Oh, your brother's like your mom. This one's like me." I noticed that the dad had earlobes that dangle, whereas
Yeah, that's specifically genetic,
what's his
yeah.
face Jay has earlobes that connect,
To connect.
and both the brothers also have the
Right.
dangle, whereas Vince and Jim both have the connect.
Interesting.
That's nuts.
That's
That
such
is
a
so
detail.
cool.
I was
Attention to
just
detail.
watching it like, show me the earlobes. Show
Show
me
me the earlobe.
Show me those earlobes. Show me them now.
Totally missed that.
Yeah.
That is so
I mean,
interesting.
that's crazy detail though.
Wow.
On the developer's account.
That is
You
so
guys
cool.
are amazing for seeing that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did not see that at all.
That's damn.
Wait, how many of you saw it? Because versus.
I didn't notice the earlobes.
Mm-mm.
I didn't notice that.
Okay.
I noticed
I
the
came to
jawline.
I came to the conclusion that Jay wasn't theirs just based on that conversation.
Mhm.
And then when I did kind of notice some
Interesting.
similarities, but I didn't fully commit to that, but still.
Oh, the second that Jim put the hat on, I was like, he knows Sharon. And then when Paul was like, "Oh, you were at Sharon's bar 15 to 20 years ago," I'm like,
Yeah.
Jimmy,
The thing-
Jimmy,
Well,
what have
I
you
was-
been doing?
I was thinking that Jim was just involved in the entire crime thing.
He could have been.
That's why he could have been there.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's something.
I mean, yeah,
that
that's
this
another
makes
thing as
him-
well, is that the fact that he was in Sharon's bar 15 to 20
Mhm.
years ago means he wasn't in prison or in rehab.
Before we continue, let's look at the team recap on the screen really
Yeah.
quickly. So,
Yes.
Debates.
yeah,
The stats.
looks like we have Kevin.
I got explore, quick and thorough finding hotspots.
Mikey.
I got fast reflexes. Completes quick actions with speed and accuracy.
Nice.
Mhm. I think I've got all rounder for the third time in a row. That's just well
You're well
balanced.
balanced.
It's all
I mean,
balanced.
That's
Perfect.
good.
It's well balanced.
That's stable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got overrider, used overrides to exert maximum
Good.
influence. Yeah.
Nice. And then we've got Angel Arts and Roma. We're soulmates. Why are we soulmates, Roma?
Because we agreed most often in our choices.
How sweet. How about
There's a new couple in town.
right?
Yeah.
Roma, you also were well balanced.
I was also an all-rounder,
I
yes.
was as well. And then Sam.
I got Peacekeeper this time.
Somehow.
Avoided overriding others.
Yeah.
Should have seen her last chapter.
Well, last chapter she definitely was
last chapter I
not.
got Overrider.
Yeah.
Yeah, last chapter I got Overrider, which is funny.
And I
Hilarious.
got committer. Rarely changes a choice once made.
There's
unlike
also a
that.
new connection.
Yeah.
There is also a new
that's-
connection of Nemesis.
Yes.
Me and Sam.
Sam and Mikey. Just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
so
weird.
we disagreed in our choices at the least. We agreed the least in our choices.
Yeah. I
Which
would have
means
thought
that,
that Hannah and Sam would have did this.
Yeah, that's
last
fair.
time.
But like, I think it's just because of the fact that like, I think Sam and I were very opposites on the whole gun stuff. Very at certain points. But hey, it's fine. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right. And then looking at what's next. Interesting.
There's some new ones in there.
Yeah, so I got honor, angel arts values integrity and doing what's right, and principle guided by strong moral convictions. Why don't we go in reverse order this time, actually? So let's go with Mikey all the way to the right first, and we'll shift our way to the left.
Sure.
Let's go reverse.
I got my values is love, so I cares for others and acts with empathy, and I got kind as my traits, so I seek to comfort and reassure others.
You got all the hearts.
Yeah.
I did. Got 3 hearts.
So I got love as well, and then principles guided by strong moral convictions.
I got love, cares for others and acts with empathy, and I also got cautious, which is interesting because I don't think anyone else has this. Thinks carefully before acting. So I guess I must have taken my time with some choices.
I got justice. I fight for what's fair and usually legal.
Usually.
And then I've got principled, guided by strong moral convictions.
I also got justice, and then my trait was instinctive, acts from their gut.
That's interesting.
I do love that it's a moth and a light bulb as the symbol for that.
like moth to the light. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what that was.
Yeah. And then
I got the same as Hark.
Nice.
Honor, values integrity and doing what's right,
Heck yeah.
and principled, guided by strong moral convictions.
And then Kevin.
And I got family again. Sticks by their family, whatever it costs. And then playful. Finds the levity in every situation.
Sounds like Kevin.
I'm surprised
That's very
I'm
Kevin.
surprised I didn't get playful because I definitely was very like overriding that joke. I overrode that joke at one time. I felt very strong about that joke.
Well, that's principle.
That's
so,
true.
It's correct.
Cool. Let's take a look.
Oh Lord, yeah.
Here we go.
All right. Which one do you want to go through first? Do you want to go through Vince or Jay? I think Jay's will be shorter.
Let's go through Jay first this time.
So Jay, we have fixing the roof. Sharon arrived, and then we have told Sharon about fight, which led into a bunch of other stuff apparently. We had the visitor. We pleased Thorn. I think his name was or something Thorn. His last name was Thorn apparently. We gave him the watch. We handed over the watch, and then we told Sharon about Thorn. We drove Bear to the woods. We found Bear's watch, which apparently the whole thing about telling Sharon about the fight, the handing over the watch, and the telling Sharon feeds into the fact that we found the watch.
Interesting.
And then we refused to dig the grave. Thorn woke up, refused to bury Thorn. Thorn escaped. And then we came home with Bear. We found Bear. We saved him. Bear hospitalized, and Jay bought time.
Right.
And there is a bunch of other options there, which I am very curious about, which all leads into a situation which actually leads into one of the last choices on Jay's tree. But let's go back here to the start.
Right. If you notice that orange line from Bear hospitalized, Jay bought time, that feeds into the choice when he
there's a
shoots
crossroad
Vince.
outcome, which is what those lines
So
are.
I'm wondering if the choices from his flashback would have resulted in him not necessarily shooting Vince.
Yeah, or maybe even killing Vince.
Or that's true.
Different.
Or killing Vince. Who knows if Vince is a playable character now?
We do. So we have The Long Night Continues, which is the start, and then we go straight into Stayed with Michelle and Concussed Jim. I don't know how exactly that's supposed to lead into that choice because there's a bunch of different ways, but that leads us straight to Sharon arrived at motel. And then we told Sharon about the pager, which feeds into something later on as well. We got chaperoned by Jay. We bonded with Jay. Then Sharon discovered the book, which is apparently a 97% rate for that. 52% had a heart-to-heart Michelle. We decided to sue the airline, which is apparently a story changer. 26% already knew about the affair. Okay, so if we don't if we don't ask about the affair, I assume she tells us here.
Yep.
And then we decided to stay married. Dale gets a date. Oh, poor fella. The bus crashed into the motel. Shootout. Dale killed. So that's not actually a specific thing that.
Yeah.
That's not scripted. That's something that happened because of choices we made.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's our first death. Dale's dead. Michelle got trapped under the bus. We saved Michelle with Joyce. Vince, Michelle, and Jim upstairs, which is apparently a 20% thing. So we ended up getting there. We escaped from the fire alone, and then we were attacked by Dante because of the fact that we told them about the pager. Because she obviously tells him
she outed
about
us.
61% fought off Dale. 61% of Tyler found Zoe. 27% kept the gun raised, so we're in the minority there. And then 21% of people ended up with Jay shot Vince, and then 70% of the time Zoe is taken by the Holts,
which is also not all the time. It's really interesting. I thought it was she would always be taken by.
But it looks like there's another.
The way
choice.
that we ended up, it looks like the way that we did it, that would always happen with the way we did it. I think. Because of the fact that we fought off Dale and then Tyler found Zoe, I think that means that no matter what, Tyler will find Zoe.
Possibly.
And,
I'm curious.
Maybe.
Yeah,
It looks like
but after Tyler found Zoe, there's a whole separate.
Maybe if Dale isn't dead.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe if Dale isn't dead.
Because there's no room in the car.
Because if Dale isn't dead, obviously they don't necessarily have the room in the car, and maybe they'll just say, "Listen, you helped us out. We'll let her go," sort of thing. I don't know, but that's really strange.
I think if it's in fact the case that Jay wouldn't necessarily shoot Vince, then not shooting Vince would probably have led into Zoe not being taken. I think.
Yeah.
Well, from the looks at that, it leads into it anyway.
Vince kept gun raised, and then beneath that there's another thing, which I assume is lowering the gun, and that leads to another kind of branch where you could end up with a different outcome than the one we had.
Yeah, no, you see, I don't know if it's a case of Jay shot Vince or the one below that. I don't know if you can go from the one below that to not having Zoe taken by the Holts.
No, I'm talking about right before that.
I know.
Dante.
I know. There's the one where Tyler found Zoe, and then there's one directly below it. I assume that might have something to do with the fact that Dale is dead in our playthrough.
Very cool.
Interesting stuff. Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff. There's not as many choices in the orange tree as always, because that seems to be like a secondary story.
Yeah.
But that secondary story seems to have a really massive effect on the primary story in this case, because of the fact that orange line leads directly to Jay shot Vince.
Right.
So I'm curious about that one.
Since I don't know how long Joey can stick around, Joey, do you have any things you want to talk about or chat about with this chapter?
No. Really speechless, to be honest. This was really good, this chapter. It's crazy. And all those other decisions that are still there, it's mind-blowing. And I really want to know what happened if he just let the father hang himself. This feels so important to me. Yeah, other than that.
Anyone else have any other thoughts on this chapter and anything that happened in this chapter?
That was an absolute rush.
Huge rush.
Sam, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say the only point I wanted to say is I wanted to give props to the storytellers here. This is absolutely amazing how all these choices can make this complex story. It's really cool. I'm really enjoying this game. It's amazing.
Yeah. Again, like, because of this graph, like, it does show you that our choices do seem to have impact. And it certainly makes me want to replay this game again and just see what it would be like if I played by myself, or honestly even another group of 7 other people.
Oh, this would be very interesting with different people.
With people that maybe even have already played the game once, have already played through it once. You get the same, get 8 different people together who may have seen the game and you'll still get different outcomes, I think. So I think that'll be really interesting.
You see, I would love to play this through either with like the same group again, just to see like what people would do knowing what we now know, because obviously we know about the whole Zoe's going to potentially be taken by these people, and Dale might die depending on the choices we make, and the fact that depending on what we do or say, Jay's dad might hang himself, and that might have a big thing to do with all of the endings. It's just crazy. Like, this is really, really well put together. I really love this.
And I really like
this game. If this game, even if this game isn't on sale, buy it. It's legitimately good. Buy it and see if you can't convince a friend or two. Maybe play it by yourself once and then convince some people to play it with you. This seems really fun.
Go ahead, Joey.
I think a lot of the fun that we're having is because we have such a diverse group. We've seen there's so many splits and decisions. It's crazy how many different views we have here.
Yeah, I was saying that I don't know if it caught it because the credits were really loud, but I was saying to Hart shortly after the chapter ended, I was like, I think half the fun is just discussing this with your friends and just being like, why did you override that choice? And like the debate that it spurs is like one strand of why it's so enjoyable. I feel.
And I just like how passionate people are about specific choices and like how much they care or don't care about certain decisions. And like, even though, like, for example, at the very end, even though the outcome of the putting the gun down or enlisting Jay or not putting the gun down, even though I didn't end up getting what I had been pushing for with all the overrides, it still was like exciting just watching the back and forth and just think, which side's gonna win? And then I was like, oh, okay, like I got, I like how as a group we still evenly split, because it is more interesting when we have those like when we have those what's the right word? It's more interesting when we're not always agreeing and doing like making all the same choices all the time. I like that. I love that.
Yeah.
And the climax was the game just coin flipping us.
Yeah. I was about to say the game like gives you like two chances, and then if you still can't agree, the game's just like, fine, I'm making the decision for you.
Yeah, which is
you had your chance.
Twice in this
it was the climax of our big battle. It was just coin flip because the game was like, yeah, you guys,
I'm flipping a coin.
Figuring this out.
Yeah, we're gonna flip a coin, which I think is smart.
Also, one thing that I think will be really interesting is the fact that saving Bear is the vast majority. Over 80% of people save Bear. So if you don't do that, I am very curious about how vastly different Jay might be in that ending scene. Also, Dale dying here is a 58% community thing. So apparently Dale dies here the vast majority of, not the vast majority, the majority of the time. Dale will die in this chapter. So I'm curious about how him not dying would also affect the whole story, because obviously there's more chapters to go. I don't know how many more chapters we have to do, but apparently there's still more chapters to go. So
we had a bunch of introduced characters into this chapter. How do people feel about Sharon, Jay and the brother's mom? What do you all feel about her character?
We know Mikey's big.
She can step on me.
Yeah.
Listen, that woman deserves better than Bear, but she's also she reminds me a lot of my mom because of the fact that she's had to deal with, essentially being left alone to look after 3 kids and having to deal with all that. And ironically enough, I'm a sibling's half sibling, so there's also that difference as well. There's that little connection between me and Jay. But like as a person, I think Sharon's just doing her best, and I appreciate her for that. But I don't know if she made the right decision, because she seems to have just thrown Vince under the bus by saying, "Hey, your little mole told us about your fuck." That made me kind of go, "Okay, Sharon, you're being a bit verbose there. Maybe you shouldn't oust the guy for that."
Well, she promised to get both families out of this. That was like the moment that Sharon was done for me.
Yeah.
She betrayed us.
Other opinions on Sharon?
She seems more like it's hard to put into words, but she definitely seems more put together than Bear.
Yeah.
Like when she acts, it feels like she's acting with more like more conviction, more authority than Bear is. Like Bear seems to be like he made bad decisions and now he's being strung along while she is like, she's taking charge of the situation,
Yeah.
whether that's a good or bad thing, obviously, that's up for debate, but like she seems, I don't know, she knows how to take charge of her family, which is probably it probably comes from the fact that Bear apparently hasn't been there for the family, so she's had to step up for her boys. So I feel like that comes through in this most recent chapter. That being said, I also don't appreciate her throwing us under the bus.
Yeah.
But that probably comes from this motherly desire to keep her boys safe. So as long as if I can throw the heat on someone else, I'll do it.
I said this before, but I love the pacing of the storytelling in this game because I think Jay's flashback was great to allow you to have a better understanding of, how their family kind of got to where they are at this, like what led them to this robbery. Because, I felt like I definitely empathized more, even with Dale and Tyler, who I wasn't huge fans of, but I can kind of see, especially once they brought in like their dad, and I get it. Like they were given some pretty terrible cards dealt to them, not necessarily by their choice, and a lot of them are also being strung around by circumstance, much like Jay has been strung around by his brothers. And so, I'm trying really hard to have a better understanding and empathize with them, which I clearly didn't have prior to the flashback. So I appreciate them feeding these little things. They do a great job of telling the story, both in the present and in the past, and it looks like we're about to jump into the future now, it feels like, with Zoe being older. So the way that they handle time is hard to do, and I think that this game has been doing a fantastic job with that.
I agree.
Anything else? No? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just real quick, I want to touch on Bear as a character. Is he kind of a dick and a piece of shit? Yeah, he is. But I love the way he's written, and just like the nuance. He brought up like he was in a war, but they don't go on it like very much, and he doesn't use it like too much as an excuse or anything. But it's kind of like in the back of your mind of like, oh, well, maybe something happened to him. And then that's where like the gambling addiction came in and like all of this other stuff. And like, I just like how he kind of drove the story like in that flashback. And like, I felt like they introduced him well. And, just like the short time that he was in the story, I felt like they did a really, really good job with him. Because like almost immediately, like you could just see people like instantly react to this guy come in. It's like, oh great, who's this? Oh great, he's a piece of shit. Oh great, he's beating up on his sons. But like then you also see like he really cares about the watch and like passing it down the line and stuff like that. And it's like, they still give him like a nice like full body character.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
And the thing about him mentioning that he was in a war is that looking at his age and looking at when this is set, it's probably Nam or Korea, which not great wars to be in.
Right.
No.
Terrible. Yeah. Because like a lot of people look back at World War II vets as, the last great generation because they fought this awful pressure. But then there's, the reception that a lot of people got from Korea and from Vietnam were both terrible, coming back to being spat on and all this sort of stuff, and even modern day veterans especially have that sort of thing, and Bear obviously had to deal with that. He would have had to deal with coming back to being treated like a piece of shit, and he found whatever joy he could in alcohol and gambling. So in a way I understand his fall to where he is now, but at the same time it's like, well, you have to own your decisions.
He's still there.
Yeah.
No, I think that's an amazing point, Kevin, because you're obviously not supposed to like Bear as a character, but they still flesh him out enough that you can see him in different ways. You can just sit there and say he's a piece of shit, he's this, he's that, but you can also say he's clearly struggling, he's clearly got issues from the war, and it clearly does eat at him based on what he tried to do. So even a character that we're clearly not supposed to root for, you're exactly right, Kevin, the writers have obviously fleshed him out and made him somebody that has multiple sides to him.
I mean, so far, the only characters we can root for are Vince and Zoe. Everyone else has had has had sides where I'm like, man, I don't know if I like you.
I like Jay. I still am rooting for Jay, personally.
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
I'm rooting for Jay.
Jay's not my favorite.
Jay's not your favorite. Do you think he's too passive? Is that why? Like he's...
Well, I just think... I don't, like, he steps up, and then, like, I don't know, he just, like, he makes, like, decisions when he needs to make them.
Yeah.
But he is passive, and then, especially, like, at the end, I was one of the only people, like, at the very end, the very last choice, Zoe's crying in the back. You just shot her dad, and it's like, at that point, it's like, hey, do you want ice cream? Or, hey, how about you stop crying? It's like, no, he just shot her dad. He needs to harden the fuck up and just be like, hey, shut up. I'm trying to get my family out of this situation. It's no longer about your family. It's about mine. And
I can see that.
I don't really like him.
I
mean, I like him as a character. It's just, I don't really
like
him.
No, that's fair. That's totally fair. While we're still talking about Bear, I wanted to bring up something that I said out loud during the scene when he was trying to hang himself, because I'm trying to be a lot more sensitive about it, and I felt that when I said something, it was a knee-jerk reaction, and as soon as I said, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. So one thing that I said is that when he started to hang himself, I said something along the lines of, you went from one stupid decision to another stupid decision. And I think, to be fair, if you were to ask me about suicide a couple of years ago, my knee-jerk reaction is, it's a stupid thing to do, and it's the easy way out, and ultimately the people that end up being affected by the suicide is more the people that were left behind versus the people that actually did the suicide. Like, ultimately, it's more about them, and, I could say things like, it's more of the selfish way out. However, since then, I do feel that it's not always that simple, and it's complicated, and I'm trying to be more sensitive about that. And as somebody who is in the LGBTQ spectrum, I recognize that I'm at a disadvantage compared to some of my other LGBTQ plus peers, because I feel like a huge percentage of people in that position tend to at least have some form of depression, or possibly even the idea of suicide may have sort of crossed their minds to some degree. And I never had that. I never suffered any form of depression at all. Did I have a challenging life growing up as a gay boy, as a gay man? Yes. But I don't think my mentality overall got to that point, at least not to the degree that many of my friends have. And so I'm trying to be better and recognizing that I don't know what that's like, and because it's just not something that I can relate to from my own experiences. I'm trying to be more sensitive and trying to be more aware of that kind of stuff. So my apologies to people.
As someone who has experience with that, Hark, I appreciate your apology, because many years ago I was in a situation not too dissimilar from Bear's. I had a note written up and everything, so I know what that's like, and I sympathize with Bear a lot, because a lot of the time you make that decision, and it's decision that you made, and you think it's the best way, or the only way forward. For most people who make that decision, it's not because they think it's the easy way out. They think it's the only way out. They think it's the only choice that they have in that moment is, I need to do this, or else things just won't get. There's no way better for me. This is it. This is the only way out. And I understood that, but I'm also glad that you get the choice to save Bear, because I'm wondering now if in the next chapter you might see Bear, maybe not better, but at least he'll have the choice to see his kids grow up, and maybe one of the two of them now actually live a life, other than what they were living.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to say on that, because I do have experience with this as well, because I think when people see scenes like that, I think comments like the one that you made, Hark, is there. I think what people don't realize is that's never an easy thing to do for the person that's doing it. It's not like you've had an argument or you're feeling rough and it's a very easy, like, it's not, it weighs on you. It is difficult. Even pushing yourself to the point where you're going to do that, it's never something that person, no matter who they are, no matter what they're going through, takes lightly. And I think sometimes there is a conception, depending on how things are portrayed, that, like somebody said, that it's the easy way out. Mikey's 100% right. They feel it's the only way out. It is not something that people do to win an argument or to avoid accountability, or anything like that. And I think sometimes people that, and I'm really glad that you kind of qualified, Hart, that obviously you haven't had that experience, but it's absolutely not something that people do for those reasons, in my experience.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else? I appreciate this because, like I said, I'm constantly educating myself in a lot of these things because I do feel that my opinions, have to be refined, and I feel ignorant about a lot of things. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that and being open about it, both Hannah and Mikey, when you didn't have to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, actually, I do want to say one thing. I'm sure I'll let us wrap up in a second. So just for complete transparency, and because I want others to kind of take this in mind, when I saw the trigger warnings for the game, I did actually look up the context of it. Nothing detailed. I kept myself as spoiler free as possible, but for my own self-care, I had to make sure that I could handle what was going to be coming on to screen. And I would just say, because I know we encouraged earlier, by the game, it's great, and it is great, but if there is anything on the topics in this game that is triggering for somebody, just do your research, because rather that than put yourself in that situation where you're uncomfortable. I had to do that for this. Obviously, I'm not in the habit of doing that with these games because we want a blind reaction, but sometimes you have to, depending on the context of what's coming up.
Yeah, your own safety is the most important.
Yeah,
it's always the most important. More important than not spoiling things, more important than having a fresh reaction. That's the most important thing, is your safety.
Right.
Quite frankly, I think if someone were to get like, oh, you didn't have a spoiler-free reaction, how dare, like, I'm like, that's a very shitty way of thinking. Like, no.
Yeah. I do really want to commend the makers of this game again for, like, if one person doesn't want to see that, no one gets to see it. And I think that's really important, because I think safety tools and things of that nature, they've come up again in the tabletop RPG community, and which I'm on Twitter, so I get to see the stupid arguments. And if you're in a game, or if you're in a community that doesn't value your safety and tries to override you, like, I mean, we had override battles, but this is not something I would ever override someone on. Like, this is, and I really commend the game makers for not making that an option. Like, this, one person's uncomfortable, none of you get to see it. Play it on your own time. And I appreciate that. I think that's important.
I am curious, if we did skip that scene, does that mean that scene is just not in the story at all? Like, his attempt just doesn't happen?
I think it's that you get the happy ending.
Yes, that's what it said. It gave a warning that like if you skip, it will give you the most positive outcome, basically.
Which I think is the one we got anyway, where where Bear survives, he's hospitalized, and Jay buys them time.
Interesting. Got it. So it wouldn't even. So it probably would have still shown his attempt. Like that's what I'm curious of. Would it even shown his attempt, even though we got the happier ending? I don't know.
I think it would have just like not shown that section of the story. It would have probably gotten to the point where like they were having drinks on the porch,
and they explained,
and just like that's it. Story's over, basically.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe they would have.
That, or they could have managed the shots, so they might have edited it so it's just like Jay's reaction or something like that, and not shown any of the actual act.
Yeah.
Got it.
Probably could have also cut out the part where just before Jay shoots Vince. Maybe they could have cut out that one scene scene from the flashback or something.
Maybe
just cut straight to him saying I'm sorry, and then shoot him in the leg or something.